Andrea, welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Hi, Ken. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being with you today.
Yeah, well, we got to meet each other a few weeks ago and talk about your background a little bit, but our audience hasn't heard it yet. So I thought it would be great if you could just walk us through. I know you've had a long business career and both as a coach and facilitator, but also in the corporate world. So maybe walk us through your career if you could.
Yes, sure. That will be quick anyway. Yes, as you say, I had more than 20 years of corporate career. And before doing what I do, I'll come back to this. So it's
Sure.
performance coaching. I've been primarily in the energy industry. So I worked actually the oil and energy industry, which is an important distinction right now because we're moving into different type of energy. But I was more into the traditional oil industry. So I work, as you might expect, in different parts of the globe, in different areas from Africa, Middle East, North Africa, Scandinavia, my own country, Italy, but also in the UK, where I came here 10 years ago. So I had all my great career. So I moved up my ranks quite quickly, by the way. So that was quite interesting. By the age of 35, I was already managing director and CEO of a joint venture company, and I moved a little bit, I would say besides traditional oil to manufacturing, industrial. So that's essentially my word. And then move up again, different type of ranks in different organizations. Then I joined the consulting world. That's the reason why I came to London 10 years ago to join a different consulting firm. I became a managing partner. And then in 2019, early 19, I had this sort of, illumination about, okay, what I want to do for the rest of my life. And my calling was helping others, as many of us. I decided to go into the coaching path, but with a kind of a different angle than traditional executive coaches. So, of course, I certified as an executive coach in Florida, but most importantly, I decided to focus on pragmatic results to bring to leaders, and primarily very senior leaders, because that has been my work for many years. So, my work now, looking, 5 years later, essentially is being performance coaching, performance consulting. So I do work primarily with the CEOs and with the first direct reports, so the C-suite, in the context of a leadership team, helping them to drive what I call incredible or extraordinary performance. That's what I do, and coaching is just part of the process. And I had clients from North America to Saudi Arabia, so it's quite interesting type of diverse type of clients in terms of industry, but also geographies.
Were you able to kind of jump right into it, having come from a
Yeah.
consulting background? Were you able to pick up clients right away, or was it something that took a little while to build?
Look, you know how many times people ask me this question, because I know it's a pain for many consultants and coaches when you start
Sure.
working on your own, right? I would say that my couple of things. So one, my corporate career has really helped me to create and develop a network that became at the beginning like my new clients.
Hmm.
But also, I think I spent a lot of time nurturing my own network, and even when I didn't need it. How many times we read people say, "Look, remember to nurture your relationships, your network." When you don't need them, right? Because
Right.
when you need them, it's already too late, or it's not, we're not here just for transactional relationships. I always thought about the long term, and that really helped me out in getting clients quite early in the day.
So you could hit the ground running because you already had those ongoing
Yes.
conversations that were going on, people that you were
Yes.
connecting to, and so, and you're focused across industries because it sounds like you're mainly just focused on the who, right? Who's the leader? What do they need
Yes.
versus the industry or the product? Yeah.
That is one reason. So, as many, I started primarily working in the oil energy space because that was my close space where I knew most of the people. But then, as you know, when you start to do a good job, and getting people results, then the typical word of mouth really is really happening. I can experience on myself. You start to see people talking with each other, especially when you work at very high level, as I
Hmm.
do. There is a very high level of trust needed, but also chemistry when you work with senior leaders at that caliber. So they don't necessarily, maybe write testimonials on YouTube or social media,
Right.
etc. But what they do, they speak with each other, and they only refer people they really trust. And that to me really helped me to go cross industries. But again, that's one thing. The other thing is quite early days. I was a keynote speaker in conferences, but also created my own podcast, as you do, Ken. The Work Class Leader Show has been very, very successful, where I interview CEOs. And for me, it's an opportunity to create further relationships with my target audience.
Is most are most of your clients in Europe? Are they in the US? Are they all over the place? What does that look like?
By proximity, it's clearly here in the Europe because
Right.
that's where I live, and it's easy, especially when it comes to having offsite and organizing things. But if I consider all the clients I had so far, it's really like, which is quite interesting, maybe just 20% UK, 30, 40% Europe, 20% Emirates and Saudi, and 10, 20%, if I made the calculation right, to
Sure.
North America.
So I imagine through this work, because you're talking to similar level people, C-suite
Yeah.
people, um, and I'm always like fascinated by trends. You know, what are the best people doing? Also, what are the things to avoid? So, what are you seeing from successful senior level leaders that you would give advice to our audience and say, you know, hey, senior level people are always doing this, or senior level people never do this. You know, what are some of those things that you've picked up along the way?
Well, there are many different attributes and traits that we're considering. Let's start with something that works very well at that
Mhm.
level. So at least people I work with, and I know they created that elements that really made them successful. I would say first, they created what I call the bold future. So to me, bold future is a very important part of the first steps of my work with the CEOs. Now, why is this important distinction? Because every CEO creates a strategy for the future. Everybody does. Now, most of CEOs, even if they're trying to imagine something extraordinary, in the reality, they are really so much constrained by the current reality that what they ended up doing is just an incremental strategy, meaning
Mhm.
kind of the 10% better, the 15% better, which is okay. I have nothing, against that. With my clients and with the most successful CEOs I interviewed, I know what they did is something slightly different. They created a future as I say, is a future by design. So they
Mhm.
created a future that is not even in existence right now, but they created because they believe to the future because he has a purpose. And once you do it with your own words, then you can really accelerate the opportunity to achieve that future that you created by believing it and let as well the entire organization believe it. And I found it particularly compelling and important for their own motivation, also for as I say, deliver something different. I'm Look, what I stand for, Ken, I stand for what I call extraordinary legacy. Meaning, I do believe that we are on this planet to do something extraordinary, and we have the opportunity and we have the possibility. So the question really is, if you are maybe now listening as a CEO, do you just want to do a good job and do a little bit better and be safe, or you want to really make an impact on the future of society, leave an extraordinary legacy for yourself, be remembered, and do good for the community? So
Sure.
that is, I would say, the most interesting CEOs I noticed.
So I don't remember which book it was in, but I remember sometimes this is referred to, if I'm equating it right, to like a BHAG or a big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's usually a
Right,
CEO that's got
right.
this vision that, again, no one else has seen. And sometimes it's a statement. Sometimes it's like, we're going to be the first, I'm making it up
Yes,
right now, but the
yes,
first cell phone
yes.
company right now to have some kind of wearable device on every single human being in North America, like that kind of thing, right? It's usually comes with this vision that is so big that no one else could really see it, but you can see it so clearly that you might be able to take people along for the ride, something like that.
Something like that. And
Yes.
it's fascinating how I interviewed is the CEO of the smoke-free department in Philip Morris. So the largest, one of the largest tobacco company. And they're working really creating this incredible future of letting 1 billion people stop smoking and use smoke-free products. That's to me is a bold statement because that's what I find it particularly interesting, especially in the consumer world. You are really making a difference in the society. You are
Right.
transforming the society. That's the impact to me.
Right.
But being bold, when you are so driven by being bold and be different, really, first of all, you energize the entire organization first.
Right.
And second, you create something for yourself. So look, and that's a different choice because everybody probably wants to do it. But then again, the current reality is short-term results,
Right.
pressure from the shareholders and financial constraints. The question is, because we have a choice, okay, do we still want to do the bold future but fixing the current reality in the short term? Or we say, you know what, that was great, but I can't commit with that. I do prefer playing safe and solving and fixing what is in front of me right now. It's a choice. I just find that the two type of CEOs producing two different results at the end.
How do they so obviously the one that with the long-term vision with the big hairy audacious goal that's getting the team united, that's marching them down the field, obviously that's going to be a more successful long-term person, but the reality is you do have your stakeholders, you do have your
Yes.
shareholders, you do
Yes.
have your investors or whatever you have, or you've just got the bills to pay of the business if you're running something smaller. What have you found? How do the best leaders balance that short-term reality and need for results while still staying attuned to that long-term vision? What have you seen the best leaders do?
Look, this is such a wonderful question, and it's one of those questions that's very difficult to answer because it takes a number of things. But from experience, I would say, Ken, the number one thing is about mindset.
Yeah.
Is creating a mindset that allows the ambiguity to operating in the short term basis, but also in the long term at the same time. And that is incredibly difficult in people because psychology matters. So when you're really so much pressure, feel pressure and stressed about the current concern or current constraint that you have, you really have such a very limited space, even in your mind, from a cognitive standpoint, to think about the future, right? It's the notion that when we are so busy, we kind of think strategic about things, right?
Right.
It- Unfortunately, there is a specific constraint due to the way how we are designed as humans, right? So there is an element of that. So it's
Yeah.
mindset first. But second also is how you're going to show up in an organization with this idea that ambiguity is possible and is okay. And that creates a completely different ball game because when you do that, people, first of all, if that is does or is done with authenticity and humility, people understand that there is a level of ambiguity they need to consider, need to deal with,
Right.
which is way, way better than just say something like, um, yes, we have such an amazing future. We, plaster our walls with that. But then the reality, we are acting completely, in opposite of that because
Right.
people don't see what you're doing. And look, I found extremely powerful of engaging the entire organization with this notion of ambiguity. And especially right now in the current uncertainty that we have out there, every CEO needs to face with ambiguity. Unless, again, you want to play safe and say, no, there is no ambiguity for me. There is only short-term priorities, financial recovery, cost control, or whatever, revenues. But that's what we're doing. No promise about anything else.
I also
So
feel like that
ambiguity
minds
to
oh,
me,
sorry. I also feel like that mindset, that quarterly mindset, it's a game of survival almost, right? You're just like
yes,
it's like how do I get through another quarter? How do we make it past the earnings report? How do we make it past, and you're always looking over your shoulder. It's like what's the threat? What's the threat? How do I extinguish the threat, right? And I think, you know, I know that when I've had larger teams and we've been pushing for numbers, I think I try to be very transparent with the team as well. While like, look, here's where we're going. The reality is we also have certain performance metrics we're trying to hit. And by hitting those metrics, we get more autonomy. We get more freedom. We get the ability to, we
yes,
don't have people breathing down our necks. And so there is this balance of we need both. The most important thing is that long-term vision, right? But along the way, if we can hit these quarterly benchmarks, if we can do these different things and trying to include the people that can make that happen all the way from the front line up to, the mid-level managers and everything else, I think that's key because I think if people are rowing in the same direction and they know what their North Star is, and they understand what is needed along the way and they're part of a team, then they're willing to help you get there, right? But I think again,
Absolutely.
if it's I used to laugh because I don't know if they were as popular in Europe as they were here in the States, but I remember in the 90s and 2000s, every office you went into had did you guys have the posters called successories? And it was always like it would be like a I remember in Idaho, there's a golf course, and on that golf
Right.
course, one of the greens is actually it's an island. The actual green is an island, and you have to get boated out there to make your putts. And it says something like opportunity is on the top of it, and then at the bottom it says, you know, in every difficulty there is an island of opportunity or something, right? And everyone had
Right.
those
Right. Right.
successory
Right.
posters. Every good manager, every bad manager, but my point is like after a while it just falls on deaf ears. You were mentioning this earlier that if you claim it and put it on your website and all that, but you don't actually practice it day to day, then after a while in a way it's worse than to have ever even had the goal or the vision at all, because you've now soured people to the idea that when you guys come up with these big ideas, you're not actually congruent to your own values, right? And so I think it's extremely important to not only have the vision and to get people to buy into it, but to along the way when there's challenges to talk about it, right? And to still
Yes.
stay aligned to that vision and to still redirect back to that vision.
And that's my point about authenticity. I mean, I think
Yeah.
what people are looking for is just, tell us the truth and tell us, whatever is, to understand what's going on in the business, to understand what are the challenges. Look, I think transparency at the end of the day is actually really working for the leaders, because once you do it, people really um, become more compassionate about the challenge that the business is facing. They are more understandable. They start making action and taking action that are consistent with what they see. So it's actually you're gonna bring all the team together. That's why, look, I'm also writing a book right now in terms of what's the future that is probably in front of the CEO. So what does it mean for a CEO or for being a CEO in the future to thrive, given whatever is going on right now? And one of the areas is about the element of humility and the broader pattern of humility behaviors, in transparency, honesty, compassion, and all these elements are so important to create the environment in organization where people feel right. So I can trust you as a CEO because you do what you say. You tell me exactly what's going on, and you guess what? You get people along. You get people in your journey when you are sincere and you share it. So Eric, look, it requires a high level of vulnerability. Yes, but that's what it takes to develop something powerful. So why not exploring it if you are a leader?
No, I agree. And I mean, I think a lot of times when I'm thinking about leadership and thinking about my own conduct and the way that I, present things and ideas, it's like, how would I want to be treated in this situation? What information would I want to
Yes.
have? What do I respond to? Right. And I think it always comes back to I respect people that respect me. I want to be shown mutual respect, right? You can't just ask for it. You have to give it as well. Part of giving that is including people on what's going on with the business and why we're doing things certain ways. And so excellent. Well, so what are some things that you see? So we'll talk both about things that you see that are really working, right? And one of them is this having
Yes.
having a large goal and having this vision for the future. I know there's a Tony Robbins thing that says leaders it's funny. Leaders don't see things for worse than they are or better than they are in their current situation. They try to see them for exactly as they are and then see them for much better than they are and paint a strategic vision to get there. And I'm kind of paraphrasing
Mm,
that, but that's exactly what we're talking about. It's like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's like, no, there's the reality of the current day, but then there's also this thing that I can see that I can teach you guys how to see or that we can envision together, right, and get there. What are some of the things when you're coaching? What are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing senior level people make?
right. So I think probably the one of the themes of the last 2 or 3 years, in my personal opinion, and my observation working with senior leaders, I think is this couple of things. One is, or maybe three, but I'll be quick. So one is getting very complicated for leaders to break the silos they've been in organization for many years. They all complain about we're working in silos, we are now one team, one company. There are a lot of complaints, but they really struggle to tackle that and creating the sense of collective ownership about results. And that's to me is very, very strong issue, a big issue right now, especially for, of course, medium and large organizations, and primarily those that have kind of business or consumer facing, and those they are not necessarily in that situation. But it's quite common. It's very frequent. So I hear a lot of leaders complaining about it. Mistakes is they really struggle to find a way to unify a team, starting very at the top, so they can actually happen on the other levels of the organization. That's one big areas. The second areas is this concern, this complaint about, well, people don't execute here. So, you know, I really struggle to push people to do things. Things are not happening. This, frequent complaint about people not doing what they're supposed to do. It's fundamentally they say because it's what they see and probably is right, but it's also true that they don't appreciate that people operate according to what they see. Is their own mindset. If the mindset is concern of, or I would say, um, close in a very small frame of reference, that's the only thing that they see, and their actions are consistent with that small frame of reference. So instead of pushing and asking people to change their action, I would probably go and say, how can I shift people frames so they can see something different? Because if they see something different, they can finally operate in a different way. And that's to me is a big misconception about how to lead. Is leading by shifting people mindset rather than leading by, you know,
Raising
commanding
the
people what
bar.
they need to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, but yeah, because to me, right, when you mention that, I'm like, if people aren't executing and they're not executing because maybe they're not motivated, maybe they don't see that vision that we were just talking about, then to me, the answer to that question might be in the mirror, right? Like it might be a leadership issue, right? Like are they are their pay plans aligned to their performance? Are they being, is it being called out in a good way? Is it being recognized? And I think one of the things that leaders can do, especially, and I'm guessing you're dealing with this a lot because of the size of the organizations that, the leaders that you're coaching represent, but you especially find this like after an acquisition, right? New two companies come
very common.
together. You've got two different cultures, and it actually gives you both points that you said. You've got both silos and execution and finger pointing sometimes. And I again think that the answer to this usually lies in leadership being transparent and I don't want to say apologetic, but almost, hey
You
guys,
can.
yeah, we didn't do a great job bringing
Yes.
this together, right? I mean, we could have done some things differently, and here's what we're going to do moving forward, and here's what we expect from you moving forward. But I feel like it's always a two-way street when you're asking for things. I think as a leader, you should also be holding yourself accountable to what you're going to bring, what the follow-up is going to be, what the rewards are going to be, what the development plan or whatever it is. And I think so many people do get that wrong, where it's just like, no, do it because I said so, do it because that's what we're paying you for. People are looking for much more than a paycheck, I think, these days from their job.
Agree. Look, to me, and what we are both saying here is we probably both believe that the future of leadership is something different that what we have seen for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
So, first is clearly the command and controlling to empowering people, that transition. Sometimes I hear people say, yeah, but that is already happening. Well, maybe, but maybe not. So it's way deeper, that disconnection between, those two different styles. But also I think is really approaching your role as a leader in a very different way. I always say the CEO's role really is an orchestrator, is
Right.
an integrator of people. It needs to deal with the human element of business. And some CEOs, they don't want, unfortunately, they don't want to deal with the human element of the business because they think about numbers. It's all about strategies, it's all about finance, it's all about investors. Yeah, that is one way of saying. The other way of saying, which is more empowering, in my opinion, is that business is made by humans. So if you really want to be a great leader, you need to understand how psychology works. You need to understand how dealing with humans, which again, it sounds like banal, right? But it's just the basics. So when something is not working in an organization, in my experience, it's never about the strategy. Yeah, sometimes it could be the wrong strategy, but most of the time, because we are not dealing as humans, we will not find the right way to deal with humans. So if you are a CEO and you showing up as a human CEO, guess how many opportunities can open to yourself, but also to the team working with you. So it's a different concept, it's a different way of leading. So orchestrating, integrating, shifting mindset, not giving answers. I know I have a lot of pushback from CEOs say, well, that's not me, it's not going to work. I made my career to the top by actually acting one way. Well,
Yeah, they
if
won't
it works
stay
as a
there.
CEO,
No.
you're winning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what got you here isn't necessarily going to be
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely. But that
Yeah.
is one of the bias of many senior leaders. They think that they got in the position thanks for the brilliant career, which definitely is the reason. But once they're there, they can definitely operate in the same way they were operating before. Now, if it works, good luck. Nothing to change. But if you start to feel frustrated or complaining about things are not moving fast enough, my answer is, why don't you look at yourself first and the way of being? So how you are showing up as a leader, how you relating yourself with your own role. So
Right.
that is a fundamental question.
You mentioned a minute ago about silos and that being one of the biggest
Yeah.
things. What is some of your common advice with with a CEO? Let's say they did, they're new in the role, they're coming in. It's not imaginary. There actually is a lot of division within the company, a lot of finger pointing and things like that. What are some of the strategies or high level tips that you give them to start breaking down those silos?
Yeah. First of all, you need to create a solid common ground where people operate from. Meaning it's important to get everyone together and understanding where everybody is. Especially in the silo situation, everybody is really in a very different situation, different position. They see their own turf, right? They're seeing their own things. So the first things to do is you want to bring all these point of views, all these reflection and observations and perspective, on the foreground all together and sharing, because just that, if you think about just doing that, it allows people to see something different, to see how the other people are operating, why they're operating in such a way. So that's to me is the foundation of any work. The second, you need to also start creating as a leader the condition environment for people to share openly and safely what they are, the challenges that they have, the gaps that they see for themselves. You need to create an environment of trust and transparency, as we discussed a little bit earlier, to allow conversation to happen. And finally, once you're able to do these pieces, I would say the third element, which is an elevation of what we discussed so far, is this notion about collective ownership, which is really, I believe, about. It's this idea that it's not anymore about you, it's not about you. So despite your individual success, we don't succeed, or you don't succeed if we don't succeed as a team.
Mm.
And that is a very hard thing for people to appreciate, but also to acknowledge and also to embrace, especially if they've been successful as the individual contributors, right, in their own
Yeah.
silos. That is a massive shift, but because once you're able to do it, you see incredible things happen. Because you can imagine, right, when you work in a unity in that way, when people are so much, committed with each other and have their own back, and gosh, it's an amazing place to work for executive. And then, if you cascade into an entire organization, it's a very difficult place to be, by the way. It's not easy to get to that level, but that is the key.
Yeah, I would think at first, like you said, it starts with. I think human beings, we just have the tendency, like the way we're wired, that if we're not getting information, a lot of times we fill in the blanks ourselves and we fill them in a negative way. So when you have these silos, it's like they're assuming things about the other departments, the other leaders
Yes.
that are probably not even true. It's just your mind has a variety of scenarios that could be true, and it latches on to the ones that are the worst usually. It's just unfortunately the way that we're wired. Providing transparency allows you to see things for how they really are. It doesn't mean that they're all always roses. It just gives you clarity on like, oh well, the reason the service department can't deliver my sales is because they've been understaffed. And the reason that they're understaffed, and when you start actually being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and I'm guessing that the final step in that, which is the integration of the teams towards a common goal, has to be built on a foundation of trust. And the foundation of trust has to be built through a foundation of transparency, right? So it's like transparency and understanding of each other's models of the world then moves into trust, which then moves into maybe working towards a unified goal and kind of having each other's backs and not seeing each other as, you know, opposition or competition, you know?
It's a great summary. That's exactly, a great framework to operate from. And to going back to your point, I like actually the metaphor saying, fill in the blank and then you fill in the blank based on what you see, right? That's your own way of seeing things, which really brings me to the point is we live in a world of perception, Ken.
Yes.
We live in a world of perception, but we deal with the perception as if they are realities. And when we treat them as a reality, then we create silos, then we create issues with people because we turn whatever we have in mind as the absolute truth about something. And when we are so stuck with one idea, one perspective, it's so difficult to change it because internally in our brain has been already converted from just a thought to a truth. So
Right.
it requires a lot of energy to go back and challenging or questioning what was already considered truth in your mind.
Right.
So and that is a huge impact on people action.
Absolutely. It is so much harder to unravel it because I think we're geared, or I think our minds are geared to wanting to be right. So if we believe something, I think we're constantly looking for confirmation that it's true, right? So going
Yes,
back to
yes,
the example of
totally.
sales department versus the service department who's got to deliver what the sales department is selling. And if my thought is, well, the service department is terrible, they're not getting their work done, they're lazy, then all I'm looking for is evidence of them being lazy. And if I look for it, I'll find it. If I thought they were great, I could find plenty of evidence that they were great as well, right? It's just like wherever our minds take us. So, what when you see CEOs ultimately I don't even know why I'm going here, but I'm just curious. So when a company, when a large company like publicly traded company
Mm.
replaces the CEO, what is that? What happens at the end of a CEO's run that causes a board of directors to say, and I know it could be a variety of things, but assuming it's not ethical or personal issues or something like that, assuming it's a performance thing, a leadership thing, when they decide to make a move, what are some of the common things? Is it the people piece? Is it the results follow, I guess, but when you normally see them just not make it, what is it? Is there a common denominator that you've seen?
You mean as a reaction from CEOs, what they're going to do next?
I would say no. I would say when a board of directors makes a decision to say we are done, we're moving,
Right.
we're done
What's
with
the
this guy.
trigger for
What's
that?
the
You mean?
trigger? Yeah. Do you see
Right.
common triggers for that?
So there are a couple of things I would say. So the main common denominator is still the money, whether we like it or not. So the financial performance are not good. That's unfortunately is the driver for making the decision
Right.
to replace the CEO. And I said unfortunately, but sometimes maybe it's a good idea and it's a good strategy because I strongly believe that some CEOs can perform incredibly well in one organization and might not necessarily perform in others, as any of us, right? Because probably we have lived ourselves, in similar situations. It definitely happened to me.
Hmm.
So I can say that is again very common and it's very human. So I would say the financial element is the first. Now, depending on the type of investor that you have a different reaction as well. So, for example, when you are backed by private equities, they have a very, very
Short.
different
Yeah.
reaction
Yeah.
or approach to different type of investors. So now, as you said, listed company, they have a little bit more time to operate with because it's broad company, it's long-term plan. So normally it's given more space and time to CEOs to perform, etc. On medium-sized organization, that's not at all what is happening. What is happening right now is that the average tenure of a CEO is definitely shorter, and they receive, in my personal view, more pressure than others.
Mm.
So mid-level or large level, but not listed, the pressure is incredible high.
Yeah.
And when the pressure is high to deliver performance results and dividends, you don't really operate at your best. Now, I know that pressure is a privilege. I know that CEOs are used to live with pressure. We can tell to each other whatever we want. The reality is when you start operating with stress and pressure and fear, your action will be definitely consistent with that. So forget about the gray ball future because the fear is going to give you, going to put you in a very different mindset and also different state, meaning that, for example, is now clear from science that when we are so stressed and feared about things, psychologically speaking, we tend to freeze as human beings. We freeze. So it's like when you give a very negative or stressful message to your employees, and you're expecting them to start acting because they see the fear, say, oh, it can be very, really bad here unless I change something. That's the
Mm.
expectation of providing fear to the people. The reality is very different. The reality is when people feel fear, they actually freeze, at least
Mm.
most of them. And the same thing happened to the CEOs. If they start to fear, imagine what's going to happen to their decision making process. Imagine what's going to happen about the future. Imagine how it's going to happen to our engaging employees. So there are so many things that potentially happen. So I don't know whether I answer to your question, but yes, financial pressure, financial performance is number one. The people side, whether the CEOs that are doing a good job as a people CEOs, I think is a nice to have, unfortunately, for many investors, which it
Yeah.
shouldn't be. But look, if they're happy with the results, they're happy with whatever the CEO is doing from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah.
If they're not happy, they're questioning everything is happening.
I think the people side might give you more time, right? It might give you, I mean,
Yeah,
at the end, you've got
that's
to
a good
produce
point.
results. But if they're like, well, I mean, no different than a head coach of a football team in a way, whether it's American football or soccer, um, it's like, okay, the players are on board with this person. They don't have the right record yet, but everybody's on board. They seem to be going in the right direction. Let's give them some more time. Versus results are bad and the players don't want to support the coach. They're gone, right? I mean, there's no
Yeah.
future in that. You've lost all confidence. So I think what the people skills get you is probably more time, but not an infinite amount of time, right? And maybe an extra quarter or two.
No, infinite. No,
Yeah.
and not at all. And that is a very good point, by the way, Ken. Because look, one thing that I've seen doing wrong by many CEOs, for example, especially when they are new in the role and they haven't been promoted, so they're coming from outside or from different departments, is they're waiting too long to make a decision about changing people in the leadership team. And to me, that is a huge mistake because look, if you're waiting again for perfect information in order to make decisions, you will never survive as CEO.
Right.
Never. It's not it's not effective. It's not even possible.
Right.
So here's the thing. Human CEOs or people-centered CEOs, they're running the risk of over again talking about bias or dealing with their own optimism bias that people can achieve at some point. They can do it. They will do it. And then they wait a month and then two and then three and then four and then it's already too late. So trust your gut feeling sometimes because you are experienced, if you have been a leader for many, many years, as most of CEOs had as an experience. So it's time to make faster decision because yeah.
Well,
People can't wait.
I think that still it can be a people-centric decision, even though you're letting people go, because maybe that
Oh
person isn't
yes,
serving
yes, exactly.
the employees of the company very well either. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, we've all had bad bosses where you're like, isn't someone looking at this guy and like gonna make a decision because he's
Yes.
terrible. I remember having a boss when I first landed in the corporate world that was it literally was just awful. Even as I look back on it right now, he's just not good at his job. And I remember there was a person above him, so high ranking guy that I was new to the company. I had just sold my company to them, and he wanted to keep me on board and groom me. This is like two levels up. And without bashing my boss, this guy had the people skills and insight to let me know that without saying anything negative about my boss, he let me know that sometimes in leadership things need to play out. Whatever you're seeing, trust that I can see it too. Never mention my boss, right? And we
Mm,
have big plans for you. And if you believe in the company, sometimes there'll be, you won't always be reporting to people that are, perfect for you, but trust that. And it helped me. I think I would have left as a young leader. I think I would have left the company if he didn't have that talk with me. And then things played out as they should. And then I started trusting the company instead of the individual leader, because I knew that in a company of tens of thousands of people, that no matter how well they do at hiring, that sometimes not everybody's going to be, perfect for the role that they're in. But I could trust. Again, I had that vision that you started talking about at the beginning of our call, the vision of where we were going. I had the vision of the entire leadership team and the faith in the entire leadership team that my future didn't need to hinge on just my direct report, my or who I was directly reporting to. Does that make sense?
it does, and I lived a very similar experience. So I had most of my career in the corporate world has been primarily with very, very, very bad leaders, very,
Yeah,
very bad managers. It's been an awful experience. Now, there are a couple of things though to consider. So one is bad leaders, they are toxic in the way how they are behaving. So to me, that is no even a decision to make. They need to
yeah,
go,
that's immediate.
right? And then all the other leaders, they're not performing, so let them then go. Actually, you're making a service to the company, but also to themselves, because what's the point of staying an organization not performing and getting people hungry or whatever? So they, as I said before, they can definitely perform in other environment where the right context is right for them.
Yeah,
So you need to separate the two different cases because they're driven by two different reasons. But
yeah.
that is really a question.
No, and in the example I was giving you, it wasn't an ethical thing or a bad person thing. It was just not competent, right, for that
Yeah.
job. And they did get rid of him. But what I understood at that point, I was 32 years old or something, and I was like, okay, I get it. Like I get that the company gets it and that they're going to take the right action. Will it always happen? To me, it should have happened that day, right? So is it always going to happen in the time frame that I want it to? No. But if I'm aligned ethically and I'm aligned with the values of the company, that it was cool to know that it was going to play out long term. So awesome. So tell me, I can't believe we've talked this long already. I could geek out on this stuff all day long with you. Um,
Yes.
we're going to put the
Great.
ways to get to in contact with you and certainly to listen to your podcast, which is really, really good. I know you're releasing episodes, at least weekly, I think, right? Where you're interviewing CEOs and other thought leaders.
We do weekly episodes, so we start interviewing CEOs early in 2022, although the show started in 2021, and since then has been a really, really incredible acceleration of downloads, etc. Why? Because we're bringing people that's something to say, they're making an impact, they're not easy to reach, and we are creating a space for CEOs to share. And I find it particularly useful, but also insightful for the audience because they hear firsthand what's really happening in the CEO's world. Yes, we publish every week an episode, and now we double down on YouTube. So we had the channel from January 2024, just because we had such amazing experiences, and people want also to watch and see how CEOs are talking to, and it's going super well. So, and it's growing. We're now approaching the Fortune 500 CEOs. That would be
Very
more
cool.
difficult to get them on board because it's not as easy as for others, but we have a big plan ahead. Yes, it's the World Class Leader Show. That's the name of the show.
Really cool. So I encourage you guys to listen to that, and we'll put all the links and ways to get in touch with you in our show notes. Anything else before we close out here? It was lovely to have you on, by the way.
It was a great conversation, Ken. Really great, and I appreciate the depth as well of the conversation that we had together. To me, I'm passionate, as you probably can see. I'm passionate about this topic because I know it's not. I don't think it's is spoken enough. I don't think we talk much about the life of the CEOs and what is happening right now to them, how the scenarios are changing and shifting. Because look, there is this misconception that CEOs are leaders with all great paycheck, great benefits, and living an amazing and wonderful life. They don't. The reality from someone who is working with them, I can guarantee that yes, might happen definitely to some individuals, but all the people I work with, they are in the weeds. They are
Yeah.
working as crazy to make things possible and to make an impact. And look, I know it's unbiased, but to me, I have a really, uh, again, I'm very compassionate about their life and what they're doing. Again, writing my book, it's early days, but will be available end of the 2024. But anyway, so last message is if you want to engage with what I say, what I write daily on LinkedIn. I'm very, very, very present on the platform. I talk constantly about mindset, CEOs, performance, the connection of these three elements. And I have a lot of people that are reaching out, they like what we're doing. So if you're more interested about this topic, LinkedIn and follow me could be a good idea.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate having you on, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was awesome.
All right. Take care.